Let the front benches change over. Right, let us come to the next urgent question. Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Business and Trade if he will make a statement on the US steel import tariffs.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have seen the proclamation issued by President Trump overnight, which enforces a full return to 25% tariffs on US steel imports on March the 12th, 2025. Only details on steel have so far been published by the United States, not on aluminium. The intended effect of this proclamation is to revoke existing arrangements that have avoided these tariffs, such as the UK-US resolution, as well as any separately agreed product exclusions from the tariffs. What British industry needs and deserves is not a knee-jerk reaction, but a cool and clear-headed sense of the UK's national interest, based on a full assessment of all the implications of the US's actions. The Minister of State for Industry is meeting representatives of the steel industry and trade unions this very afternoon, and the Secretary of State for Business and Trade is in touch with representatives of the British steel industry and will be meeting them within the next 24 hours. Since July, we have engaged in a systematic way with the UK steel sector, and we will continue to engage with UK industries impacted by potential tariffs. Historically, we have benefited from a strong and balanced trade relationship with the United States, worth around £300 billion and supporting millions of jobs. So in trade policy, we stand ready to work with President Trump to find solutions that work for both the United Kingdom and the United States.
Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Mr. Speaker, the United States is our greatest ally and our greatest single trading partner. The UK and the United States are the biggest investors in each other's economies, and yet this is a moment of great peril for the UK steel industry, because the government has failed to engage with gusto with the new US administration. The Prime Minister, despite his many air miles, has not got on a flight to the States at the first possible opportunity, and years of student politics-style insults hurled at the President by the front benches opposite has put our relationship in jeopardy. And that's before the embarrassment of the Chagos Islands shows we have terrible negotiators running the country. So can the Minister confirm what conversations he or the Secretary of State has had with his counterparts in the United States about these steel tariffs? How many times has he spoken with US trade representatives on this matter since Sunday? And will he confirm that the first 500,000 tonnes of steel to the US be tariff-free as they were under President Trump's previous administration? What economic analysis has the Department produced on the impact of these tariffs on jobs and on the wider UK economy? And what conversations what plans does the government have to reciprocate with tariffs on US steel and aluminium or on any other US goods? What are his plans for the safeguarding measures against steel dumping when they expire in June? Mr. Speaker, we on these benches have been calling for the government to strain every sinew for a trade deal with the United States. Much of the work was done by his department the last time President Trump was in the White House. So will the Minister finally set out to this House what plans the government has to obtain a big, beautiful free trade agreement with the United States?
Mr. Speaker, well, let me try and answer the various questions that have been asked by the opposition front bench. First, on the big, beautiful deal that they contemplated and abjectly failed to secure, I would simply observe that was one of a whole number of trade deals that they boast about but abjectly failed to deliver. The Honourable Lady described this as a moment of great peril for the UK steel industry. Frankly, we have seen the UK steel industry suffer from a degree of neglect for many years under the previous government. That is why this is the first government in many years to set out a comprehensive steel strategy, including a commitment of £2.5 billion towards the future of the steel industry. So we will take no lectures from the front bench opposite in relation to the UK steel industry. On the substantive question that she sought to ask about the degree of contact we've had with the US trade representative, it may have eluded her attention, but we do not yet have a confirmed US trade representative. Jameson-Greer we are anticipating will be confirmed by the US Senate in the next couple of weeks. Similarly, she might suggest it's important for the Secretary of State to meet with Howard Lutnick, the Secretary for Commerce. But alas, again, I have to inform the Honourable Lady that Howard Lutnick has not yet been confirmed by the US Senate. We stand ready to have an engagement with the incoming administration once we are in a position to do so, whether that be with the USTR, whether that be with the Secretary of Commerce. In terms of the economic analysis, I hope she will understand that given quite how sensitive these issues are at the moment, as we anticipate the further steps taken by the Trump administration, I'm not sure it would be an altogether wise negotiating strategy to share the detail of the internal UK analysis of the potential effects of tariffs that I would remind the House are not yet due to be imposed until March the 12th.
Chair of the Select Committee, Liam Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is essential now is that this does not escalate, because widespread duties on UK exports to the US would be devastating for economic growth. It would be bad for inflation. It would be bad for interest rates. So I think actually the whole House ought to wish His Majesty's new ambassador, Lord Mandelson, the very best of luck in the conduct of his new tasks in Washington. But can the Minister tell the House today what flexibility he will allow to increase funding through the steel strategy to UK steelmakers, if that is something which the steel companies confirm is essential to maintain a sovereign capability here in this country?
Can I thank my right honourable friend for his questions. I'm grateful for his generous words about the incoming UK ambassador in Washington, who, notwithstanding his commitment at the weekend to fly under the radar, is already in post and is making necessary calls. He is but one of the key interlocutors that we have established with the incoming administration. Reflecting the earlier questions that we were asked, we are already actively engaged with the US administration. More broadly, in terms of what the approach to the UK steel industry would be, as I say, my friend and colleague, the Minister for State for Industry, is this afternoon meeting with representatives of the steel-making trade unions, representatives of the principal steel companies in the United Kingdom. The Secretary of State is going to further that dialogue in the next 24 hours. There has already been outreach to the UK steel trade body, so I can assure him in relation to the commitment for the steel strategy, which we're due to unveil in the spring. There is already a very active dialogue that will incorporate issues related not just to potential tariffs, but also to the risks in terms of trade diversion and the substantive issues that the honourable gentleman raised.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Clive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Donald Trump's tariffs will cause much uncertainty across the world, not least for those working in our great British steel industry. These tariffs aren't just bad news for UK steel producers, they would have a tangible effect on people's lives, from lower economic growth to higher inflation. It is likely it will not end with steel, and so we may well be caught up in America's economic vandalism. Will the government set out how US tariffs may affect the UK economy, and what preparations are being made as a result? And does the Minister agree with me that British jobs are on the line and that businesses and workers want to see the government standing up for them?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, to give a sense of quantum to the House, it's about £400 million worth of exports from UK steel goes to the United States. That represents about, if I recollect accurately, 10% of UK production. So the honourable gentleman is entirely right in recognising that this is a significant moment. It's one that we take very seriously. That is why we're engaging in dialogue, both with the workforce and indeed with the owners of the various steel producers here in the United Kingdom. More broadly, as my honourable friend alluded to earlier, of course we want to avoid a significant escalation. We saw, if you like, retaliatory measures being taken under the first Trump administration. It feels to me that this is an opportunity for the UK to exercise both cool heads and a clear-eyed sense as to where the national interest lies. These tariffs are not going to be imposed until March the 12th. That gives us the time both to undertake the dialogue that is already underway, to reach a judgment on the basis of the analysis, which we have already done, and to ensure that our interlocutors in Washington and elsewhere are engaged in a constructive, mature dialogue.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's quite evident that this will have a negative impact on the UK's economy. But in amongst all of the palaver that we see with the imposition of tariffs, what's often forgotten is the impact of this on the workers and their jobs and their livelihoods. So can I ask that in the formulating a response to these proposed tariffs, that we work closely with the workers' representatives in the form of the trade unions to make sure that the workers are not forgotten in all of this?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm happy to give that assurance. I should probably declare an interest as a member of the Community Trade Union, but whether it is Community, whether it is the GMB, whether it is Unite or the other representatives of workers within the steel industry, I can assure you that they have been a central part of the dialogue that we started in July. Frankly, we inherited a situation where there had been significant underinvestment in steel capability in the United Kingdom for many, many years. We are backing up that commitment to dialogue with an active commitment of public funds, and we're doing that in dialogue with the workforce as well as with the companies themselves.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recognise that the Minister was quite right in saying that we don't want a knee-jerk reaction, but I would gently point out to him that this should not have come as a surprise, bearing in mind the President's comments both before and after the inauguration. Many of my constituents who work at the Scunthorpe Steelworks already have an uncertain future, and this will just increase their concerns. Can the Minister give an assurance that the meetings that are taking place in the next day or two, he will report back to the House as soon as possible?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, there are, of course, plenty of opportunities for ministers to be held accountable in terms of the dialogue that we've started and that we continue with steel producers in the United Kingdom. In relation to his initial point as to has this come as a surprise, candidly, no, it has not come as a surprise, but it's also fair to recognise that the new President has a speciality in generating uncertainty. It's part of his style of negotiations to create uncertainty as to what will happen next. As I sought to suggest in my opening answer, not only do we have answers on steel today, but we don't yet have answers on aluminium in terms of the proclamation that emerged overnight. So I think it is right and reasonable in these circumstances certainly to be mindful of the statements that have been made, and I can assure the House that we were, to undertake analysis, which I can assure the House we are also continuing to review and reach a judgment on, but at the same time to recognise the date at which these tariffs come into effect is the 12th of March. And as a consequence of that, there is a window of opportunity not only to engage with the workforce and with the companies, to make sure that we better understand exactly what they're looking for in light of these specific measures, but also critically to engage with the Trump administration directly, which is work to which our ambassador is already turning his mind.
Luke Meyer.
Speaker. Let's not forget that steel is a strategically important industry both for our economy and for our national security, and if other countries are going to be protecting their steel industries, then our government must not be afraid to make the big fiscal choices required to protect our own. Can I ask the Minister to assure the House that responding to these tariffs will be a priority for this government, and so will putting the industry on a sure footing in the years ahead?
Madam Deputy Speaker, in terms of being willing to make the big fiscal choices, of course, since July we've committed to £2.5 billion of public money to support the steel industry, with resources being funnelled in part through the National Wealth Fund. So I can assure you we've already been willing to put money as well as commitment behind the steel industry. He's absolutely right to recognise the strategic significance of this industry, not just on its own terms, but also much more broadly to the manufacturing capability of the United Kingdom. I also want to assure him that in terms of the risk of trade diversion to which he alluded, given the potential remedial action taken by other trading blocs, we do have protections that remain in place until 2026. And in that sense, there are safeguards that are in place in relation to trade diversion, as well as the ability for the UK to act independently.
Chris Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I listened very carefully to what's been said this morning. I mean, we've known since November this was coming. Even though the press is saying someone will get a special relationship, what's clear today is Trump shows strength to countries that are in a position of weakness, and that's where the UK currently is. Is it not the time now that this government thinks very seriously of being back in the EU where there's strength against strength and the customs union, the single market, because we don't know what else is coming down the line and Scottish businesses need to know the future. It could be whisky, it could be fishing, it could be manufacturing. Can you give us some assurity about how you're going to stand up to strength from global protectionism?
Madam Deputy Speaker, in terms of an understanding of Scottish business, again, I should probably declare an interest, given the Glenkinchie distillery is in the Lothian East constituency. Only this morning I met with Chivas Regal and indeed with Diageo, so I can assure the honourable gentleman that I am fully aware, and certainly no one party should claim to speak for Scotland or for Scotland's businesses. In relation to the departure from the European Union, it is no secret that I was a Remain campaigner and wanted the United Kingdom to stay within the European Union in 2016. I would simply gently point out to the honourable gentleman that had his party been successful in their endeavour to break up the United Kingdom in 2014, the direct and immediate consequence of that choice would have been Scotland's departure from the European Union.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister mentioned in his response the neglect of the steel industry by the previous Conservative government. In fact, it was allowed to decline to a size smaller than the industry in Belgium. Does he agree with me that the UK's market presents a great commercial opportunity for investment in steel, and through this government's steel strategy, we have the opportunity to attract that investment to the UK?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am very happy to give the assurance that my honourable friend seeks. We have a comprehensive plan for steel. Sadly, we have not had one in this country for a number of years. That plan is backed up by significant public resources, again, that were not previously available under the previous government, and we look forward to publishing a comprehensive strategy for steel in the spring of this year.
Sir Julian Lewis.
If President Trump offered to cancel the tariff on steel imports in return for the UK throwing in the dustbin the appalling Chagos giveaway deal, would the government agree?
Tempting though it is, Madam Deputy Speaker, to indulge in the hypothetical negotiating strategy as ventriloquised through the honourable gentleman, I think consistent with the approach that we need to take a considered view of what is emerging and still emerging in relation to aluminium, I think the responsible case is to say we should leave those in the good offices of the UK Ambassador to the United States and the Foreign Secretary.
Jonathan Brash.
The reality is that countries across the globe are moving to a protectionist model at the same time as we are still importing 68% of our steel needs. There is clearly an opportunity here for the UK. Next year, our steel safeguards come to an end at the same time as the EU introduces its CBAM tariff protections. Does the Minister agree with me that we have to move at pace to replace those protections and back our steel industry in the same way that other countries are choosing to?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I can assure the House that we are determined to back our steel sector. The Minister for Industry, in fact, is at Sheffield Forge Masters tomorrow. As I say, she's meeting representatives of the steel industry today. The Secretary of State is meeting representatives in the course of the next 24 hours. We've established a Steel Council. We've established a comprehensive plan for steel. We've committed significant public resources, and we will publish a comprehensive strategy in the spring of this year. We take steel seriously. Sadly, that was not the case of our predecessors.
James Wilde.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's no secret that President Trump loves tariffs and intended to use them, and the Minister is coming across as a little complacent in his approach. So can he clarify if any discussions took place with the administration on continuing tariff-free quotas for British steel since the inauguration? Presumably the Prime Minister didn't raise it on his call, and that agreeing such protections is made harder by this government's failure to commit to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's a matter of public record that the Prime Minister has had a couple of warm exchanges with the incoming President-elect of the United States. I think that's entirely right and appropriate. We now have a new UK Ambassador. I pay due credit to the work of Karen Pierce, his predecessor, who did an exemplary job on behalf of the United Kingdom during that period of transition. But it remains an indisputable fact that Howard Lutnick is not yet in office as the US Commerce Secretary, and it remains the case that Jason Greer is not in place as the US Trade Representative. These are the individuals through whom these dialogues are normally conducted.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I echo the support on this side of the House for steel as a nationally important infrastructure industry that we must protect in this country? And further to my colleague from Hartlepool, agree with also the businessman who's no longer here that we must try to avoid an escalation of this. Part of that is also about our relationship with Europe, which is in fact our largest market for exporting steel after America. So can he the Minister just update us on what conversations he's had with his European counterparts? And this issue of CBAM is absolutely critical to the British steel industry, which is on its knees after 15 years of a Conservative government that failed to see its value. And will he reassure us that it is the resolution of the emissions trading scheme is still on the agenda for the May talks with Europe?
I can assure my honourable friend that we are working and continue to work through the good offices of my new colleagues indeed in the Cabinet Office, working on that EU reset, one element of which is looking at those linkages and how that can effectively work. We are seeing a significant ramping up of the level of engagement in relation to that reset. Again, frankly, there had to be almost confidence-building measures established after the deep betrayal of trust that was felt by our European friends, neighbours and allies. Let's remember there was a previous Conservative Prime Minister who couldn't even bring herself to acknowledge President Macron as a friend and ally of the United Kingdom. So in that sense, we've built the relationships, we've established trust, and we are looking forward with a clear sense of clear-headed national interest to the reset talks getting underway this year.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The threat to the UK steel industry is not actually tariffs from the US, but the cost of our electricity. The business sector has previously agreed with me that that is what makes our steel industry uncompetitive. That's the reason why imports have grown from 55% to some 70% in the last couple of years. So will the new steel strategy due in the next few weeks confirm how we're going to get the electricity price down in this country to make our electricity industry competitive?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think the difficulty with the point that the honourable gentleman makes, and I appreciate his constituency interest and the broader interests of Lincolnshire in this, is that there are other factors that need to be recognised and addressed in the steel strategy. For example, again, the indisputable fact that we inherited blast furnaces that were increasingly out of date relative to technologies being used elsewhere. It is also the case that there had been years of neglect in a number of these plants where there is a significant need for both public and private investment. So I respectfully hear the point that the honourable gentleman makes in relation to electricity prices and general power generation prices in the United Kingdom. The challenge of energy prices is not unique to the United Kingdom, but is felt across the whole of the continent of Europe. But there are other factors that we're going to have to address as part of a comprehensive plan for steel.
Andrew Pakes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I commend the Minister and the Government for their work on the steel strategy so far, but these are anxious times. British steel is a byword for British pride in our communities, in the jobs, in the products that they produce. I'm worried not just about the exports, but the conversation we've had about some of the dumping in steel, given our need to get growing as an economy. Can I ask the Minister if he recognises that this isn't just an issue for the communities that many honourable members represent, but it's an issue of national pride in places like Peterborough and the country as a whole that we get this right?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is a doughty defender of the interests of Peterborough and of his constituents, and he's right to recognise that that pride in steelmaking extends beyond Port Talbot, Scunthorpe, historically Motherwell or other locations of significant steel capability. In relation to the specific point that he raises, of course there remains a residual power available to individual companies under the Trade Remedies Authority to take action in relation to dumping that is perceived to be happening, but it is also the case, and I would reassure the House on this, the UK steel safeguards do and will remain in place until the end of June 2026. I hope that offers some comfort to the honourable gentleman.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The attacks on the last Conservative government might carry more weight if this government wasn't planning to equalise our carbon price with the European carbon price, but that's by the by. Given the conduct of China over years, measures to hold down production costs in other countries, and now President Trump's tariffs, will the Minister accept that, if not that international free trade was always a myth, that it certainly is dead today, will he commit then to abandoning the theories and the policies that follow its logic. Comparative advantage is used as intellectual cover for outsourcing production jobs and prosperity to countries that cheat the system. So can we see some trade realism and a strategy to cut industrial energy costs, a real strategy, keep us making virgin steel and get us manufacturing and exporting more?
Madam Deputy Speaker, if he has an appetite for trade realism, let's get real. The Prime Minister for whom he worked failed to do a US-UK trade deal. Let's also get real on the fact that the central underpinnings of the party of which he is part at the time of the Brexit referendum, that we were in a less protectionist world, that we would have a functioning WTO system, and indeed that we would have major trading blocs that were seeking to take barriers down rather than put barriers up, have all been misplaced. It is his leader, the now leader of the opposition, who generously conceded a couple of weeks ago that there was no growth plan that followed the Brexit exit of the United Kingdom. It is for this government to clean up the mess that his government left.
Barry Gardner.
Under WTO rules, it is, of course, available to any country to impose tariffs when it believes that there is unfair subsidy of the exports that are being presented by the other country. But so far, I haven't heard that America has put forward any argument that there is unfair subsidy of our steel industry. What discussions is the Minister now having with the WTO about this?
I can assure my honourable friend that we are in regular dialogue with the WTO. I've been in touch only this morning with Simon Manley, our exemplary British ambassador in Geneva. We were also very clear at an early stage since July that we were backing Nkosi Ngoncho-Iweala as the next Director General of the WTO. I had the great privilege of working with Ngozi when I was the UK Government of the World Bank in a previous era of the Labour Government, and I was clear and committed at an early stage that as the UK, we wanted to stand behind her exemplary leadership of a WTO at what's admittedly a very challenging time for global trade.
Sammy Wilson.
Speaker, to use a football parlance, President Trump is playing a blinder with his tariff strategy. Canada, Mexico, Colombia have all fallen into line when he has threatened tariffs. Only the EU is foolishly saying they're going to go toe-to-toe with him. Using our Brexit freedoms, can the Minister assure us that our government will put Britain first when it comes to this issue? We will not side with the EU. We will work with the American administration to protect British jobs and British industry.
Madam Deputy Speaker, while I might not agree with the characterisation that has just been offered of the efficacy and effectiveness of the US President's actions in recent weeks, it is a matter of record that we stand ready to work with the United States to broaden and deepen our trading and economic relationship. We are significant investors in each other's country. The trading relationship matters. The previous government abjectly failed to secure the trade deal that they promised, a big promise at the time of the Brexit referendum. But with a clear sense of the national interest and a willingness to engage with open minds, we're ready to have that conversation with the United States.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers to the questions. Time is coming and hopefully we'll have better news for the future. President Trump has been very clear that he wishes to work with the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and build a friendship that already exists, but he is also clear that America comes first, and he is a businessman, we have to acknowledge that. What consideration has been given to addressing the tariff issue with him and securing a deal for our business? And has he made it clear that he is prepared to give and take, and that we have much to offer in this very special relationship that we both savour and consider?
Madam Deputy Speaker, if one was to observe the comments that were made by the Chancellor last night, or indeed by the incoming British Ambassador in Washington, we're very clear that we are ready to engage in a thoughtful, pragmatic way with the new administration in Washington. We want to broaden and deepen the trading relationship. I would observe the fact that under the Trump 1 presidency, bilateral trade between the United States and the United Kingdom actually increased. We have ambitions to see that continue.
Can I thank the Minister for his responses? Anyone wishing to leave the chamber, can I ask that you do so quickly and quietly?